Greetings to everyone. Portion for today's reading is from Book of Genesis, chapter 48 to 50. In chapter 48, as Jacob nears the end of his life, Joseph brings his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to receive Jacob's blessings. Jacob recalls God's faithfulness and adopts Joseph's sons as his own, giving them equal status among his children. When blessing them, Jacob intentionally places his right hand on Ephraim, the younger, and his left on Manasseh, the older. Joseph tries to correct him, but Jacob insists, declaring that the younger will become greater. Jacob blesses them and affirms God's promise to bring them back to the land of their ancestors. This act establishes Ephraim and Manasseh as tribes of Israel. This chapter shows that God's way often differ from human expectations. The blessing of the younger over the elder reflects God's sovereign choice. Jacob's faith looks beyond his present condition to God's future promises. It teaches that spiritual inheritance is more important than natural order. God's blessings are guided by his purpose, not human tradition. Faith enables us to see God's plan beyond what is visible. In today's life, people often rely on human system and expectations. This chapter reminds us that God's plan may not always follow our logic. We must trust his decision even when they seem unusual. It encourages us to focus on spiritual inheritance rather than material possession. God's promises are extended to future generations. Living with faith means trusting God's greater plan. In chapter 49, Jacob gathers all his sons and speaks prophetic blessing over each one. These blessings reflect their character, past action, and future destiny. Some sons receive strong rebukes, while others receive promises of leadership and blessing. Judah is given a special prophecy indicating that kingship will come from his line. Joseph receives abundant blessings, reflecting his faithfulness and fruitfulness. The chapter concludes with Jacob's death and his request to be buried in the family burial place in Canaan. This chapter shows that our actions shape our future and our legacy. Jacob's words reveal that God's plan works through individual lives and choices. The prophecy about Judah points to a future ruler and a greater fulfillment of God's promise. God's blessings are both personal and generational. It teaches that character and obedience matter in God's plan. God's purpose continues beyond our lifetime. In today's life, our actions influence not only our future, but also future generations. This chapter encourages us to live responsibly and faithfully. Words spoken in wisdom can shape lives and destinies. God's plan for our lives is connected to a bigger purpose. We should strive to leave a positive legacy. Faithful living today impacts tomorrow. In chapter 50, Jacob dies, and Joseph mourns deeply for him. Joseph fulfills his father's request by taking his body to Canaan and burying him in the family tomb. After Jacob's death, Joseph's brother fears that he may take revenge. Instead, Joseph reassures them and forgives them, declaring that what they did and meant for evil, God meant for good. Joseph continues to care for his family in Egypt. Before his death, Joseph expresses his faith that God will bring Israel back to the promised land. He asks that his bones be carried with him when they leave Egypt. This chapter beautifully reveals God's forgiveness and God's sovereignty. Joseph's perspective shows deep spiritual maturity and trust in God's plan. It teaches that God can turn even evil intentions into good outcomes. Forgiveness brings peace and unity. Faith extends beyond one's lifetime, as seen in Joseph's hope for future deliverance. God's plan is always greater than human actions. In today's life, forgiveness is essential for healing relationships. This chapter encourages us to trust God's purpose, even in painful situations. Holding on to bitterness only brings harm, while forgiveness brings freedom. We are reminded to live with hope in God's promises. Our faith should look beyond present circumstances. Trusting God, help us see the purpose in every situation. Points to ponder. Do I trust God's plan even when it does not match my expectations? Am I living in a way that leaves a legacy of faith, forgiveness, and obedience? May God bless you all. Amen.